Hey everybody, it's Josh with RMS Roller-Grinder again. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of grind consistency and micron size in the swine diet. And today I have the guest, Dr. Chad Paulk from Kansas State University with me today. Dr. Paulk, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, your work history, and your time at Kansas State University?
Yeah, Josh, thanks for having me today. Um, as he said, my name is Chad Paulk. I'm originally from South Georgia. I grew up there next to the Okefenokee Swamp and did my undergraduate degree at the University of Georgia. I started with working with Mike A's in my junior year, and he really got me interested in pigs and learning about swine production. And he sent me to Kansas State University for my graduate degree. I did my master's with Joe Hancock and then worked with the applied swine nutrition team for my PhD. After that, I went down to Texas A&M and helped get their swine production program back up and going, but then had the opportunity to come back to K-State and work within the feed science group and try to connect the dots between monogastric nutrition and feed processing. So I've been back here since 2017. And it's been a lot of fun just working with our feed mill and also with our applied swine nutrition team here on campus.
Sounds like a fun journey to get to where you're at. Would you mind explaining how Kansas State University is helping the swine industry move forward and what role you play in that?
Yeah, it's really that kind of sums up why I came back here because it's such a unique opportunity. Here at K-State, we have two departments that are really involved in that. One is the Department of Grain Science, and we have our feed science major, which is where I'm housed. And so we train undergraduate and graduate students on how to manage feed mills and the feed manufacturing process. But then we also have our applied swine nutrition team over in the animal science department that does a lot on the animal or the swine nutrition side of things as well as swine production. And so we really have the opportunity to kind of bridge the gap between the two, and our students come out with a good knowledge of anything from purchasing ingredients, how we process those ingredients, all the way to how they make it to the feeder and how that affects the performance of the pig as well as the final pork quality. So it's really a complete system here, and you get exposure to all sides within the pork production side.
That's really cool that you guys show the whole full circle, from start to finish, and how you guys can train those guys to come into industry with a lot of knowledge. What interests you the most about the swine industry and where it's headed?
Yeah, I think really just seeing how technology is being implemented to improve efficiencies, make people's solve people's challenges, and then also start to think about new things like sustainability and all that kind of stuff. So really just watching the advancements. Every year I get really excited, go into IPPE. Like I said, I've really fallen in love with the feed side of things, so I love to see what new technologies are out there, well, whether it's how roller mills are being auto-adjusted and things y'all shown us on the VersaMill side, to Vindicators, to different kind of pellet coolers in the biggest pellet mill, and just how can we improve efficiencies and advance the feed mill and meet our needs more consistently.
Very good. Well, let's start diving into our topic a little bit more here. Can you tell us what is typically in a swine diet?
That's going to depend on where you're at in the world, but in the U.S. and a lot of the producers we work with, nutritionists we work with, are feeding a basic cereal grain, which is going to be corn. Depending on the price and demand, you might see sorghum play into that main cereal grain source. Then you have soybean meal as your protein source, and then vitamins and minerals to meet that animal's requirement. The other things that kind of fluctuate are going to be any kind of co-product or byproduct like distillers grains, wheat midds that you may use depending on location and price, and then also fat as a source of energy depending on price as well.
So, based on your research and your work history, your experience, what particle size would you say is ideal?
Yeah, so that's something we've been working on, trying to advance that and really narrow that down. And it really depends on your situation. When you're thinking about hitting that target particle size, the first thing you think about is what's going to optimize the feed efficiency of that pig. But then you have to also think about, does it influence handling characteristics? what's the setup of my system, how does flowability matter, and then also could it potentially negatively impact mortality of my pigs with stomach ulcers. And so you kind of have to balance those three, but the typical particle size we see is going to be that 550 to 650 microns. Once again, though, a system, it's going to depend on how many ground corn bins you have at your feed mill as well. If I can feed my boars, gestating sows, and developing gilts at different particle size than my nursery pigs, finisher pigs, and lactating sows, I might go a little bit coarser on those if I'm thinking about longevity, and a little bit finer if I'm thinking about efficiency. But once again, you have to kind of balance, are we pelleting those diets? Are we feeding them in mash form? And what's the mortality rate if we have an issue with stomach ulcers is not or not. But I think the safe number, if you want a specific one's kind of that 550 to 650 if I just have one ground corn bin feeding everything.
Okay, so you mentioned some of those negative side effects of what happens if you're not in the right particle size. I'm going to have you expand on that a little more if you would. What is the importance of hitting that specific grind size? And then what is the negative effects if you're out of spec?
Yeah, so the biggest thing when we think about formulating diets and pork production, our goal is to be as consistent as possible. That way my pig performs exactly like I expect, and when I hit my marketing date, they weigh as much as I thought they were going to weigh, and I've also hit my feed budgets correctly to kind of optimize the economics of production. So if I go a little too coarse, it's going to negatively impact my feed efficiency. We see about a 1 to 1.2% improvement with feed efficiency for every 100 microns that we reduce that particle size. So if I'm at 750 instead of 550, I'm giving up about 2 to 2.4% improvement in feed efficiency there. If I am grinding it too fine, depending on if I'm feeding pelleted diets or mash diets, I could potentially have flowability issues. That could be a problem at the feed mill or cause out of feed events at the farm due to bridging. And then if I also have an issue with stomach ulcers, whether it's a high stress environment for some reason or a health challenge, if I go too fine, it could kind of push those pigs and increase our mortality rate. So it's staying in that range and hitting what I expect is going to allow me to be more consistent and those pigs to perform like I expect.
So you guys have a on-site feed mill at Kansas State University. Between you and the students, what seems to be the most common reason that particle sizes come out of spec? It becomes inconsistent. What leads to that?
Yeah, so well, the first thing is we're dealing with students, so that's always fun. But no, they're great once they get trained up. The nice thing about here at K-State, we actually have the ability to use a roller mill or hammer mill. And I think on either piece of equipment, the biggest thing is setting that equipment up correctly, doing routine maintenance correctly, and then monitoring it. If for some reason you have something that goes through the roller mill that's not supposed to, or if you have real dirty corn, it might shift those rolls a little bit, and then your particle size comes out of spec. So routine maintenance and making sure it's set up appropriately is probably the biggest thing. The other one that's really interesting, and it kind of depends on your system, but the corn quality as well as corn moisture content can kind of sneak in there and kind of throw some things off every once in a while as well. But the biggest thing is just maintaining that equipment and making sure that it's set appropriately and nothing's changing on you.
I appreciate that insight there into corn quality and moisture as well. I would say commonly in our troubleshooting in late season, when we're starting to get ready for new crop, people are cleaning out bins, you start getting that corn that's been sitting for 12 months. We're like, guys, there's not a whole lot we can do. It's just really dry and it's been conveyed a bunch of times. It's already got 15% fines before it hits the roller mill. There's not a lot we can do.
Right.
I appreciate that input. What would you say is the common misconception throughout the industry on feed formulations?
I think that's a good question, and I'm sure everybody has their own opinion, but the one, and it kind of ties into what we're talking about today, but the energy content of the diet and your ingredients. Typically, nutritionists want to determine, okay, this is the energy content we need to be meeting in our diet formulation and formulate to that energy content. But it's really, that value is going to depend on the price of your ingredients. And so, it might be more economical for me to formulate a really low energy diet if I get a high fiber ingredient that's extremely cheap. So that energy content might fluctuate depending on, or will fluctuate depending on ingredient cost. And so being able to adapt and think about, okay, what is my optimal energy requirement based on income over feed costs or economics, and how am I constantly checking that and making those adjustments to optimize my economics there. So don't just set it and leave it, but continue to evaluate that. And because the other thing is, all of your other nutrient levels are going to be formulated based off where you set your energy as well.
Very good. Appreciate that. If you give one piece of advice to people trying to improve their feed efficiency, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think, working in the feed mill and all the things we've discussed is try to have the right QA program in place, that your diets are what you think they are. How do we just check our batching records and make sure things got added at the appropriate amount? Check our particle size, that we actually ground that corn to the right particle size, and really choose a small number of things that can make a big difference, and commit to doing those things right to provide a consistent feed to that animal. That way, if you set an energy value or set a formulation, that's what the pig's actually seeing to get them to perform as you expect.
If our viewers wanted to learn more about these things, what resources do you guys have available at Kansas State University for them to use?
Yeah, our best resource for information on swine nutrition and production and feed manufacturing is going to be ksuswine.org. It has all the information and resources the applied swine nutrition teams put together, as well as links to our feed safety resources and our feed science resources, quality assurance guidelines, and things that can help implement those programs as well.
Very good. Well, Dr. Paulk, I want to thank you for being on here today. Everybody, if you want to get some more, there's some resources that Dr. Paulk just mentioned. We'll also have some links, and feel free to visit rmsrollergrinder.com as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Josh.